Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro. Got it right here. Going to put it together in detail for those that are either really curious or mechanically challenged, and everybody knows somebody that can ruin an anvil with a rubber mallet. So this is for those people too. Coming up. I'm Roger, welcome to the shop. What I've got here is the Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro hobby laser. It's still a hobby laser even though they call it a Pro. And I needed something bigger. I already have two 3018 laser engravers and they're up in the loft and they're both busy right now because I've got a whole bunch of tiles to engrave. One of the problems I ran into was and everybody does the little 4x4s, or I should say not everybody, but a lot of people, the 4x4 ceramic tiles. I also need to do some 6x8s and I want to do some 12x12s. You can't do a 12x12 on a 3018, and if you try to do a 6x8 and go all the way to the border, it'll hit the limit and fail, like this here. So I needed something bigger. So that's what this is. Got a bigger work area. It also does not have the moving y-axis. That's something I have to deal with my 3018s. I had to make spoil boards with little stops on to set my tiles in, so that when the y-axis moves back and forth, the tile doesn't move and ruin the engraving. So this will eliminate that, and I'll go into in future videos with some of the things I do with the baseboard on that. For that, and I'm going to be doing an enclosure and fume extraction and air assist and all kinds of things, but this video is going to be just the unboxing and the assembly of this, and as I mentioned, it'll be in great detail. So here's the box. I haven't opened it yet, but on the back side of it, a bunch of QR codes that you can scan if you are inclined, and you can find the manual, or you can just go to the website, download the manual, which I did. And because I'm going to be doing this in detail, I'm going to go buy the manual, so I printed it, and it's a lot of pages. But a lot of those pages are safety and, you know, caution and specifications and stuff that we don't really need for the assembly. But I printed the whole thing. It's I think it's 62 pages. Yep, 62 pages long. So if you want to print it, you can. If you don't, you can maybe have it on the tablet or laptop and have it right there. It's a PDF you download, so up to you. But we're going to get on with the unboxing here, get this thing opened up, find out what's in there. And we'll get a closer look. Well, the first thing we have is some foam, and that's probably a good thing. And it does come with a little assembly manual here in multiple languages. First part is English, but it's very brief. It's only pictures. It's not in great detail. So that's why I downloaded the big one there. And the focal methods with using the focal gauge, which I'll get into later on. So what do we have here? There's the laser head itself. This is the 20-watt model. And we have the power supply, wall wart. I call it a wall wart, a common name for them transformers that stick out of the wall. And some safety glasses. Green. Well, really should be orange, but. And we have some hardware and the belts, the brush, cable ties, the bracket, some little pieces of wood to play with. Cable. Drag chain with cabling in it. A USB cable. the motherboard with the controls. Feet. I happen to know these are feet because I already read the manual. Limit switches. Bag of hardware. This is the height gauge for setting the focus, and along with the screws for holding the shield, or not holding the shield, but to hold the laser in place. Aluminum extrusions. And the X-axis gantry, which is pre-assembled. As such, that's everything that's in the box. And I'll get some of this plastic off and we'll get on to putting this thing together. These little magnetic parts trays are real handy to have. As you can see, alien wrench. Another one. Allen wrench, as most people call them. And little pretty cheesy stamped wrench there. And screws and bags. Some T-slot nuts, corner brackets, more corner brackets. Dump a few of these things out in here. These little magnetic parts trays are available at Harbor Freight and all over the place. They're really handy. Good way to keep all your hardware organized. Okay, so what are we going to need for tools? Phillips screwdriver, a good one. They do supply Allen wrenches, as so. If you have these are much handier. They work as a screwdriver. They have a ball hex on them. These are metric. I've messed with my other CNCs and my 3018s and 3D printers, so I've got all that stuff. You need a ruler. They recommend you have one. So got a little ruler there. Comes with this little wrench. You won't have this, but when we get to the cable ties, this is how I cut my cable ties off, because it doesn't leave a sharp burr on them like if you use an end cutter. But that's quite a ways off yet. That's all you're going to need for tools. So let's get set up here, get some instructions out. We'll go step by step. As I said, I'm going to do this in detail. Okay, if you printed out the manual, the first 16 pages are just cautions and hazards and all that, list of parts and all that kind of stuff. So you can skip that and go right to page 17. And right at the top there gives you the required tools for the laser mater. A bit of a typo there, but I got a kick out of it. You need a Phillips screwdriver, you'll need that. Cable cutter, recommended. Ruler, nice to have. Well, got one. Okay, so your first parts will be in the, if they do refer to the parts and labels, if you go back to the parts list in the early part of the manual there, they'll tell you which parts are what, label 2, 3, 19, 15, 20. If you can't figure that out by just looking at the parts here in the pictures. But this is pretty straightforward. So we'll get these parts here kind of laid out, and I'll get some things out of the way. Okay, the first thing we want to do is lay out our X and Y rails. Okay, for those that are not familiar with CNC and that type of thing, X is this direction. So this is your X rails. Y is this direction, forward and back. I should say X would be left and right. Y would be forward and back. And when you get Z, or as some people call Z, that's up and down. But that's way down the road here yet. So you want to get your pieces laid out. Now when this laser homes, it'll home to this left front corner. So you want to make sure your rails are put together in the right order. So as you're looking at it here, you'll see that 0 on your X rail down here at the bottom. As the X rail's laying there, it will be, so you can read the numbers, they'll be upright. Same with the back rail for X. On your Y rails, 0 will be down towards the front. This being the front, this is your front left corner, that's where it'll home to. So make sure you get your rails laid out like this and don't like do that or something, or you'll be all messed up here later on when you're trying to use these numbers to reference. Would it work that way? Yeah, it'd work, but that would make these engravings completely useless. Okay, these little nuts right here are called profile nuts. So on your x-axis rails, again, that's the one here in front and the one in back, you want to slide 2 of these into the profile facing out. It is facing you. And they only go in one way, so it's not like you're going to put them in backwards. You'll need those later. Next, you'll have these corner brackets. They get slid into the corners. Obviously, you can't put these in wrong. They'll only go in one way. Like so. And you want to have them on the inside part of the. I'll let that one go in. So when you get done, it'll look like that. Don't tighten those brackets up yet. Okay, using the 5mm by 25mm screw, that would be these here, that will go into the end profile like so. That's where you'll need your Phillips screwdriver. Get that started in there. But don't tighten it clear up, just kind of finger tight. Okay, the next thing you want to do is to make sure it is on a completely flat surface. This is my table saw, and I know that it is absolutely perfectly flat. And this piece of cardboard that's on here is a brand new sheet, so I know it is perfectly flat, because it is very critical that you do this on a very flat surface. So the next thing you want to do now is to make sure that the rails are aligned correctly. You want to make sure of that on all of them. Then using the 2.5mm Allen wrench, alien wrench, hexagon wrench, whatever you want to call it, you want to tighten up 2 screws on each of all the 4 brackets. So you got to go around all the 4 corner brackets on the inside and tighten those up. Okay, from there, once you have all those tight and everything's good, then you tighten up your other Phillips screws in the corners. And the next step here is going to be the front assembly. And this is where, once again, you got to make sure you know where the front left corner is, which is right here. When you look at your rails, you'll see there's a 0 and a 0 adjacent to each other. That's home. So that's your front left corner. It's very important that you, if you intend to use these scales at all, it's important that you use this reference point. Then you'll need your front panel, your little depth gauge holder, some hardware. You're going to need a couple of these feet, or at least one of them. Yeah, you'll need one for the right-hand side. The other two go on the back. You'll need what I call hammerhead nuts, 5mm. They look like that. Then you'll need some of these 5mm by 8mm screws, which look like that. Okay, these nuts we slid in there earlier, you need to move one of them over towards the edge, because you're going to be putting a screw in the motherboard. You need to get that started. You don't want to tighten it up yet, just get it started. Then you can slide that over until the top screw matches up. Get this turned around here. There's a hole right here that's threaded. One of these goes in that hole. And just put them in and tighten them up. Okay, on the opposite side, you'll need one of these feet here. It's like this. That other nut you slid in, you'll slide that over. Whoops. Another one of those same screws. Get started in that sliding nut. And then as you look at the corner here again, you'll have the same thing you had on the other side. That'll be threaded there. That's where your next screw goes. It should look like that. Well, I missed something here and I got ahead of myself. This screw you put into the outside corner for the leg is supposed to have a washer on it. So there we go. Okay, next would be the little holder here. Looks like that was 3D printed. Take one of these screws, stick through the hole. Take one of these little, what I call hammerhead nuts, and just start it on the screw. A couple of turns. Then if you turn those nuts so that they're horizontal and sideways like that, you can stick them right into the channel. I don't know that it matters that much where this goes on here. It's at the user full discretion. You can put it wherever you want. So as you tighten these hammerhead nut screw, as you tighten these screws up, those hammerhead nuts turn and bear against the channel inside. Don't like really torque on this or you'll break it. Since it's 3D printed, it's probably made with PLA. So just tighten it down. You don't get wild with it. Okay, next you're going to need the what they call the drag chain bracket. It's a Z-shaped bracket. Kind of looks like that. You'll need to turn this upside down. And what I did to make sure I didn't damage the buttons here or anything, I just set a little cardboard box underneath the rail to keep that elevated. Next you'll need another one of these little hammerhead nuts. Another one of these 5mm bolts, a washer. Okay, you hold the bracket like this. Screw will go in there like so. Start that hammerhead nut on there. Couple turns. It sets into the rail like so. Up tight against the front motherboard. And you just tighten it up. Okay, what you're looking at here is the end of the X-axis gantry, and you'll need this little bracket. A couple of these little screws. There's two holes here at an angle on the short side. That's what goes in there, but this is going to be kind of tricky. So what I'm going to do, since my screwdriver is magnetized, I'm going to just stick the screw onto the screwdriver. This bracket will only go in there one way, and I don't know if I can do this and let you see without me being in the way, but it goes like this. Hopefully you can see that. I don't really know how to get a good angle on this while I've got my hand in the way, but the bottom screw is going to be kind of tricky. So you can just barely clear the plug here for the stepper motor. You want to hold this up so it's straight and tighten those screws up. Need good dexterity for this. Best thing is to have a magnetic screwdriver, and I magnetize this by rubbing a magnet on it several times, which magnetizes it and it holds the screws. Or you could use a screw-holding screwdriver, but seeing as how those are so short, if you use the type with the claws to grab the head, I don't think you'll have enough threads left. Okay, so the next step, you get two remaining profile nuts here. Turn your rig around so that the motherboard will be at the other end on your right. And on the right hand rail in the profile, slide these nuts in there. You'll need them later. You want to slide them all the way up to the other end. Park them up there. Then you want to take the X-axis assembly, that's this guy right here. Okay, now you want to make sure you put this in the right direction. You don't want to do this. You want to do this. So what they say is the screws should be facing you. That would be like these little screws right here. Those would be facing you. The nuts on the wheels right here will be facing the back. The pulley right here will be facing the back, will be facing you. The belt tensioner, which is this thing right here, will be on your right hand side. And you just slide this onto the rail, like so. And you want to make sure that all 8 wheels are sliding and rotating, which they are. Okay, we're going to get into the belts. Okay, you notice in the belt there's a flat side and there's a toothed side. On the edges of each side here is a little sprocket which has teeth on it. The toothed side of the belt will always be down. Now I've got to figure out how to get a camera angle here so you can see what I'm doing. So this belt will go under the wheel, over the sprocket, under the other wheel. It looks like if you pull it clear back to the corner, it'll be a little bit easier to get your fingers in there to do things. So what I might do is put it over the sprocket and under the wheel first. I'll take this other end and go over that wheel, or I should say under that wheel, under the back wheel. Well, I got some hanging out. Need some hanging out on both ends. You want to leave that loose. You're not going to tighten that up yet. Then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So when you get done, you'll have a little belt hanging out at both ends, as you see here. Okay, next is on the front. I've got this turned back around now so the front is facing me. On the right corner, the screw that you put in there that I had forgot to put the washer on, went back and did. You take that out. It's good practice. Right above it is a little slot. You want to fish that belt, a little curl on the end of that, through that slot. Well, that's easier said than done. And you want to have 2.5 centimeters sticking out of there. Hence, that's why you wanted this ruler. And for those that are metrically challenged, that's 25 millimeters. And you want to bend that up. And again, those teeth need to be facing down. Put your screw back in the hole there with the washer on it. Tighten it down firmly. That'll lock that belt in place. Okay, now we'll move on to the front left corner and the timing belt anchoring over there. There's a limit switch bracket right here, and the limit switch here is on the bottom. So keep that in mind. There's a D-shaped hole right here. You want to slide your timing belt through that D-shaped hole, like so. Remember them two little nuts you slid in there earlier? Now you're going to use them. So, you want to make sure your timing belt is in the track. Need 2 of these screws. The limit switch would be facing down. Start one of them into one of those profile nuts. And you'll need another one here to go in the other hole that the timing belt is in, on your profile nut down there. Make sure the bracket is all the way up against the motherboard and tighten those down. Okay, now we're ready to move to the back, the timing belt and the back feet. So you'll need a foot, need a washer, to them 5mm screws. Slide the, make sure your nut you slid in there, you got one on each side. So you slide your belt through that little slot on there. Raise this up just a hair. Get your screw started over on that sliding nut. Helps to have the nut under the screw. Then you'll need a washer and a bolt, screw, whatever you want to call it. Lift this up. It's a profile threaded into the end of the rod there, or rail. Get the screw started. You want to tighten this one up, the one that's in the sliding nut. Then we need to set belt tension. Oh no, we're not going to do that quite yet. Do the same thing on the other side. Belt through the little slot. You done? Look like that. And now it comes to setting belt tension, and this is one, even in the manual they tell you this is one of them things it's kind of hard to describe it. What you don't want to have are any loops up here or anything, but you don't want to stretch this thing so tight that you can't move this either. So the best way to do that is just pull it. Don't use any tools, just use your fingers. Pull it tight, pull it up, tighten that screw. Same thing for the other side. I got that one a little snug. Get it out, pull it tight, pull it up. Don't be grabbing it with pliers or anything, or you'll end up with it too tight and you'll put strain on the sprockets there. And everything should roll smoothly without a lot of effort. You'll end up with pieces hanging out the back, but you're supposed to. Okay, the next step is to install the drag chain, cable track, whatever you want to call it. It's this guy right here. The ends are different, you'll see. This end here with the wider plug is the end that goes towards the motherboard, so you want to make sure you put it in the right direction. So we're going to do the motherboard end here first. Okay, one of the things you're going to need to do is carefully pull this out a little bit and bend it back so you can see these screw holes in the bottom. You're going to need 2 of these 3mm screws. This here again is where having a magnetized screwdriver is going to be a great help. These guys are tiny. You get those in there and get them started. Then you'll tighten them down, but don't crank on them or you'll run them right through the plastic. Just need them in there firm. Like so. Okay, now we're going to do the other end of the drag chain. That's up here at on the gantry. You have the same thing here. You need to bend your cables back a little bit. You'll have the same screws, little 3mm guys here. There's 2 holes in the bracket and there's 2 holes in the drag chain. Get them started in there. It's always best to get one started, but don't tighten it up till you get the other one going in there. Now these screw holes on the drag chain are slotted. You want to make sure you get this square so it's not like wonky. Wonky is a technical term, by the way. There again, snug them, but don't over tighten them or you'll break the plastic or drive the screw right through it. So when you're done, it'll look like that. Okay, next is, it's actually a grounding screw, and you'll need a 5mm bolt in the nut. And there's a little hole right below the limit switch. This is on the gantry up here on the x-axis. Little hole right there. It's on the same side you did the drag chain on. And it says to slide the bolt through the hole. Well, that hole happens to be threaded. So you're going to need to screw it in from the back side so that the threads will be protruding out towards the drag chain. And then the nut screws on them. Don't tighten it down yet because that's for the ground, which comes later. Actually, it's right here. I could do it now, but we're going to go step by step through the directions. So when you're all done, it'll look like that. Okay, next we're going to move on to the limit switches, connecting them. Coming out of the drag chain here, you'll see you'll have a red and black wire along with the ground that we're probably going to do here in a minute. As you look at the limit switch, the hinge side is where the red wire goes. And incidentally, if you happen to have a limit switch that has 3 posts on it, the post farthest from the hinge you will not use. That's a normally closed connection. The logic on the board uses a normally open connection, and the normally open is the center. And on these here that are on this rig, they don't have that normally closed post. So that's probably a good thing, keep people from getting confused. But if you happen to have one that has 3 poles, do not use the farthest one. So the red will attach to the end with the hinge. Push it on there firmly. And the black will go on the other post. And then this little wire here, which is your ground wire, will go under that nut. Which you then tighten down this little toy wrench. Okay, now we're onto the motherboard end. I turn this around, got a close-up on it. See this connection here? You'll notice there is a boss here, or a clip. You'll need to make sure you got enough cable pulled through to reach the motherboard. You want a nice smooth bend. All right, this plugs in like this. You get it lined up square. Do not force this. If you bend those pins in there, you will have a terrible time getting them straightened out again. Make sure it's all lined up and straight. This should go in without a whole lot of effort. Make sure it's square on both ends. You should hear a little click as this goes in there. You'll have 2 wires left. They go to the limit switch up here. If I can get this flipped around, hopefully you can see this. Here again, the red goes out on the hinge side of the limit switch. Actually, it'd be easier to plug the other one in first. Otherwise, the red one will be in your way. Yeah, like so. Next will be the Y-axis stepper motor. This is on the side with the drag chain. This is the stepper motor right here. If you look at the wires that are sticking out, they are marked. Little things on here. This goes X. So we'll be plugging them all together here in a few minutes. This is the Y for the stepper motor. If you look at this, you'll see there's a little boss on one side. That will face in. So when you turn this to plug it into the stepper motor down here, the red wire will be on top. As you plug in nice and straight, you'll hear a little click as it goes in. And while we're over here, this here, you'll see, get that out of there. This has an X on it, this has an X on it. These go together. They're keyed, you can't put it together wrong. Don't force it. They just plug together, just like that. Okay, for the stepper motor on the other side, you've got the same thing. You have a little cable here, as like so. It'll have the same little boss on it. That little boss will go out. If you're looking at the colors of the wires, the red wire will be closest to the gantry. This goes underneath. If you look at this, you'll see there's a boss there. That goes out. The red wire will be closest to the gantry, and it plugs in underneath. Just like so. Okay, turning this back around so you can see everything. I actually have the back towards me right now. You need this is the wire for the laser head. You notice there's two different ends on it. One is a 3-pin with a ground. The other one is a 4-pin. It's keyed. Your wire's coming out. You only got one plug left, only one place for it to go, and it's keyed. The little tab will be facing out in that slot. Just like that. Okay, now we're going to get on to actually mounting the laser head onto the carriage here. Comes with these thumb screws. I'm going to use a center hole on each side. I do have the Z-axis, or Z as some people prefer to say, adjuster ordered, but I ordered it with the laser, but it got back ordered, so I won't have it for several weeks yet. So you need to start them in like this. I use the center holes just for something to use. And this just slides down from the top. Yeah, actually you can't put them in until you get past the heads of those screws stick out, so you can't get the thing slid down. Once you get past that, I'm not going to set a height or anything right now. I'm just going to lock it in place right here. Like so. Okay, now we get into the actual laser connection here, connecting this here to the head. And on the front left screw, you need to back that out a little bit. See, you have a plug here. It's keyed again. If you look close, there's two little like prongs. If you look at the head, those prongs will go in towards the head. They just press in like so. Then this little fork here, which is a ground, go under this. You don't want to over tighten that or you'll break that acrylic right here. So don't get crazy with it. Okay, I turned this around so you can see it better. What we need to do is put a strain relief on this connection. So we'll be doing this with some cable ties. Incidentally, if you've never used a cable tie before, you'll notice one end's bigger than the other. One side sticks out. The cable tie always goes into the side that's flat, not the protruding side. If you put it in the other way, it won't hold anything. Just something to know. So there's a little spacer there that you slide this cable tie around behind. And you're supposed to use 2 of them there. You want this so that the cable will be going straight up. And then you'll need to cut off the tails that stick out. No, you're not going to probably have one of these. But I'm an electrician. So this is older than probably a lot of the people that are watching this. Okay, with the unit facing you, that is the motherboard and everything towards the front. On the right hand side, below the stepper motor, you'll see a white plastic base, a cable tie base. You slide your cable tie in underneath. I'm trying to do this to stay out of the camera view. Route it around the cable. Lay this in there so it lays nice and flat inside it. Snug it down. And cut it off. Okay, on the motherboard end of the drag chain, you need to put a wire tie down there. And what you want to do is tie this so that these cables are pulled against the outside of the drag chain. Get it snugged up, square, cut it off. At the opposite end of the drag chain, you want to do exactly the same thing. Make sure nothing is pinched or squashed where it's supposed to be. Pull the cables against the outside of the drag chain. Snug it up. Cut it off. Okay, now next, and I'm kind of wondering about this cable. I may print something to manage this cable better, but for right now, we're going by the directions. If you look at the plate right here, there's 2 little holes. You put a couple of wire ties through that. And around your laser cable. Get it set so that it is straight up in the air. You want it pointing straight up. Cut them off. And that's how you put one of these together. So when you get done, it should look like this. At the finishing touch here, we'll put the spacer in there. There we go. So as I said in the beginning of the video, this is going to be strictly assembly. I'm not doing the startup or anything on this. That'll be possible another video. There's been a lot of videos done on operating these, setting them up and stuff. But lacking is the extremely detailed assembly. One thing about this, and I will be doing a review on it here shortly. I'll use it for a while before I actually do the review and everything. But this was not provided to me. Nobody's sponsoring me. I bought this. I needed a bigger laser. This seemed to be have the best reviews and most bang for the buck, so to speak. So I thought I'd do a detailed assembly video on it for those that are maybe a little bit mechanically challenged. Hopefully you got something out of this. If you did, appreciate getting a thumbs up. I know this ended up being a long video, and it wouldn't have taken anywhere near this long to put together if I hadn't been doing a video. So they say 20 to 30 minutes, and that appears it would be about right. I wasn't fooling around with camera and waiting for jets to go over because we live close to an airport, so that was interfering with things. I had to keep waiting. Anyway, there you go. I'm Roger in the shop for Ortur Laser Master 2 Pro. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.